isn't just for Caitlin, but you asked me about Caitlin. If you're going to break a record, to me, if it's legitimate, you have to break that record in the same amount of time that that player set it.
Sheryl Swoopes was fired 8 years ago for belittling her players. It seems like she might not have learned her lesson. This time, Swoopes took a direct shot at Caitlin Clark, who many believe is one of the greatest collegiate basketball players of all time. But swooping into Clark's defense was none other than sports commentator Dan Patrick.
I told you this is going. They loaded up the schedule, front-loaded. Caitlin Clark on a bad team, the worst team because they drafted her number one. They were going to load up against better competition, and she'd played an entire college basketball season.
Who fiercely called Swoopes out for her harsh comments. So what exactly did Sheryl Swoopes say this time that triggered Dan Patrick's fiery response? And how did Dan put her back into her place? Let's find out. Dan Patrick versus Sheryl Swoopes. Dan Patrick is usually the cool and collected voice of reason in sports commentary, but recently he found himself a little more heated than usual. And what set him off? Something that the basketball legend Sheryl Swoopes said about Caitlin Clark. If you follow women's college basketball, you know Clark is a big deal right now, but Swoopes was not exactly throwing compliments her way, and that didn't sit well with Patrick. Patrick has been a famous commentator in the sports world for decades. He is that reliable commentator who always knows how to keep things balanced, mixing serious analysis with a bit of humor and never losing his cool. But this time things got a bit tense because Swoopes, a WNBA icon, had some not-so-flattering things to say about Caitlin Clark, and Patrick was quick to jump in and defend Clark. Now let's not forget who Sheryl Swoopes is. She is no stranger to the game. Her resume speaks for itself. A WNBA pioneer and a 3-time Olympic gold medalist, she has been a massive influence on the sport. She has paved the way for women in basketball, and her opinions hold a lot of weight. But the thing is, Swoopes has always been outspoken, and when it comes to calling out players, she does not sugarcoat her words. So when Caitlin Clark became famous and became a rising star and possibly one of the most exciting players to watch in recent years, Swoopes thought she had to give her opinion. Clark's ability to dominate a game is undeniable. Whether it is her long-range shooting or her court vision, she has been turning heads all season. Some people already think she is on her way to being one of the best in the history of women's college basketball. And with her fearless attitude on the court, she has built up quite the fan base. But as we all know, not everyone loves a confident player. Clark's swagger can sometimes be a bit much for her critics, and Swoopes seems to be one of them. Swoopes didn't hold back on her criticism of Clark, and that's where Dan Patrick stepped in. Patrick, who has been singing Clark's praises all season, was not about to let Swoopes' harsh words slide. So what exactly did Swoopes say to get Patrick so riled up? The comments. The conversation started off pretty normal, as you would expect. Sheryl Swoopes was invited onto Dan Patrick's show to talk about something she is incredibly passionate about, women's basketball. Naturally, the topic shifted to Caitlin Clark, who has been all over the sports headlines lately. Dan Patrick, like many other sports commentators, had been hyping up Clark, calling her one of the future greats in the game, but Swoopes didn't quite share the same enthusiasm. While she did give Clark credit for her talent, Swoopes was not completely on board with all the praise and attention Clark was getting. Swoopes made it clear that the intense media focus on Clark could actually harm her development as a player. According to Swoopes, putting too much pressure on someone so young might stunt her growth on the court. It is a valid point. Being constantly in the spotlight can be tough for anyone, especially when you are still in college. But that wasn't all Swoopes had to say.
How much more experience that gives you over other players coming in, right? So people say, dang, like he or she's killing them. But you have a 25-year-old playing against a 20-year-old. Mm-hmm. Like, you should be killing them. Because you've been doing it a lot longer than they have.
Swoopes also took the opportunity to mention that there are plenty of other talented players in women's college basketball who are not getting anywhere near the same attention as Clark. And in her opinion, that was not exactly fair. The media does have a way of hyper-focusing on one person or one story, sometimes leaving other deserving athletes in the shadows. Now, you could say Swoopes had a point there. Clark has become the face of women's college basketball, and there is no denying that the media loves to talk about her. But the point to note here is that Swoopes didn't just stop at the media angle. She also questioned whether Clark's style of play, particularly her aggressive scoring mentality, would hold up in the professional leagues. Swoopes suggested that while Clark's skills were impressive at the college level, things might not be so easy when she faces tougher defenses in the pros. This comment was what really set off the shift in the conversation. Dan Patrick, usually calm and collected, didn't seem to agree at all with Swoopes' take. You could almost feel the tension rising as Swoopes questioned whether Clark's greatness was being a bit overhyped. So is that true? Does Clark have an aggressive scoring mentality? Before we see how Dan reacted to Swoopes' harsh comments, let's focus our microscope on Caitlin Clark herself to find out if Swoopes' observation was right. Life of Caitlin Clark. Have you ever wondered what life is really like for someone constantly in the spotlight? You might imagine Caitlin Clark, one of the brightest stars in women's basketball, enjoying a life of luxury and ease. But it's not like that. Sure, Caitlin shines on the court, but off the court, her daily routine might surprise you. From the moment she wakes up, Caitlin's focus is on discipline. There is no lounging around. Her mornings start early with rigorous training sessions. She is constantly pushing herself, aiming to improve every single day. This dedication is what separates her from the rest. We see the flawless performances during the games, but it is the hours of hard work, sweat, and determination behind the scenes that make those moments possible. Caitlin is someone who has dedicated her entire life to mastering the sport. Ever since she was young, her schedule has revolved around the court. It is that kind of obsession that's helped her break records and become one of the most talked about athletes in the game today. When she is not practicing or playing, Caitlin is constantly studying the game. That's right, her life is not just about physical training. She spends countless hours watching game footage, analyzing her own performance as well as her competitors. This mental aspect of the game is something she takes just as seriously as her time on the court. Caitlin understands that staying at the top means outthinking her opponents, not just outplaying them. But even with all the fame, it is important to note that Caitlin's life is not all about basketball. She is still a regular young woman in many ways, someone who enjoys downtime, hanging out with family, and maybe catching a good movie. But even her off-court life is structured, as she knows how crucial recovery and balance are to maintaining her success. And let's not forget the pressures that come with being in the spotlight. While she has a massive fan base, there are always critics waiting to scrutinize her every move. The weight of those expectations can be intense. Caitlin's success has been a double-edged sword. While she is celebrated for her talent, she also faces constant pressure to maintain her elite status. Handling all of that at such a young age is no small feat. Off the court, Caitlin Clark's life is anything but ordinary. Sure, she is one of the most celebrated basketball players right now, but her daily routine shows just how much work goes into staying at the top. It is easy to assume that professional athletes spend their time relaxing when they are not playing, but Caitlin's schedule is packed with training, preparation, and a whole lot of focus. Her mornings start early. You know there is no sleeping in when you are at her level. She starts her day with a cup of coffee, followed by some yoga and a quick workout. She wants to maintain that elite physical condition. And this is not some casual stretch or light jog we are talking about. Caitlin hits the gym hard, working on her shooting, ball handling, and footwork. Every move she makes on the court comes from hours of practice, and it is definitely not as effortless as she makes it seem during games. Do you remember that viral clip of her training last summer? Yeah, she was not just going through the motions. In that session, she nailed 300 shots, 100 three-pointers, 100 mid-range shots, and 100 free throws. Her dedication is next level, and it is clear why she dominates on the court. Her success is pure grit and hours of hard work behind the scenes. What really sets Caitlin apart is how much thought goes into her training. The thing is that she trains for endurance. Her body needs to be able to handle explosive movements for the full length of a game without wearing out. That's why her routine includes a mix of conditioning, plyometrics, and strength training. Whether it is squats, deadlifts, or bench presses, she is building the power needed to perform at her peak. And don't forget about the cardiovascular workouts. She needs the stamina to keep up her pace, game after game. But it is not just her body that needs training. Caitlin's mental resilience is a huge part of her success. It is easy to lose focus or get discouraged when things are not going well on the court, but she has worked hard to stay sharp and confident, no matter what. Her coaches and fitness experts have designed a routine that ensures she is prepared physically and mentally for every game. Now, when we talk about Caitlin's off-the-court routine, we cannot skip over her diet. You would think a pro athlete would be all about strict nutrition plans, eating nothing but salads and protein shakes. But Caitlin has got a more balanced approach. According to a recent documentary, she is a fan of starting her day with a bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich. And yes, she pairs it with a Starbucks iced macchiato topped with vanilla sweet cream cold foam. It might sound like an indulgence, but let's face it, she burns so much energy on the court that she can afford a little extra flavor in her meals. Of course, Caitlin does not rely on fast food every day. She balances things out with healthier choices, and if you scroll through her Instagram, you will see glimpses of her enjoying nutritious meals. It is clear that she has found that balance that helps her fuel her body for performance while still enjoying the foods she loves. But it's not the only balance in her life that she is keeping every day. Balancing the fame. When she is not on the court, Caitlin is busy managing everything from interviews to photo shoots. Being in high demand comes with the territory, especially when you are one of the most exciting players in the WNBA. But with that comes the added pressure of constantly being in the public eye. Stepping out of the house means getting mobbed by fans and, yes, some haters, signing autographs and trying to keep a smile on her face for quick fan photos. That's a lot of attention for anyone to handle, but Caitlin does it with grace, even if it is a bit tiring. Despite the chaos, Caitlin makes time for the things that matter most. She is often spotted spending quality time with her family or hanging out with friends. She is also passionate about personal development, and that does not just apply to basketball. Caitlin is business-minded and knows how to balance her professional and personal life. And like the rest of us, she craves a break every now and then. After a busy day or a big game, Caitlin loves to indulge in some well-deserved downtime. Whether it is lounging at home with her pets or treating herself to her favorite comfort foods, she knows how to unwind. You might be surprised to learn that after a high-scoring game, Caitlin often enjoys some chicken parmesan, pasta, and a big glass of chocolate milk. It's so simple. But no worries. After burning all those calories, she has earned it. And the post-game treats don't stop there. When she was playing for Iowa, Caitlin would look forward to warm chocolate chip cookies baked by none other than her mom. Those cookies were a highlight for both her and her teammates after a tough match. It is these small moments of joy that help Caitlin stay grounded, even when the spotlight is bright. At the end of the day, Caitlin is just as mindful about rest and recovery as she is about training. After a long day, she enjoys winding down with a good book and a relaxing bubble bath. It is her way of resetting before the next game or the next media appearance. She is not superhuman, she needs time to recharge just like the rest of us. So while Caitlin's life might seem hectic with the fame, the media, and the games, she has figured out a way to balance it all. Caitlin knows how to keep things in perspective. Looking at her daily life, it is clear that she knows what she is doing and she is great at what she does. Dan Patrick knows this as well. It is why Swoopes' harsh comments on Caitlin angered him so much. So how did Dan react after watching Swoopes criticize one of the best basketball players of this era? Dan's argument. Dan Patrick was not about to let Sheryl Swoopes' comments on Caitlin Clark slide. He is known for being thoughtful, measured, and rarely rattled, but this time he lashed out. For Dan, Caitlin Clark's style of play is what makes her special, and her confidence is a key part of that. So when Swoopes suggested that Clark's aggressive approach might not work long-term, Patrick had some serious thoughts on the matter. Dan emphasized that players like Caitlin don't come around often. She is fearless, confident, and can score from anywhere on the court. That's the kind of player who changes the game. Patrick argued that instead of critiquing Clark's style, it should be celebrated. After all, how often do you see a player with her level of skill and drive? According to Dan, what some call aggressive, he sees as passion and talent. He even drew comparisons to other basketball greats, highlighting how players like Diana Taurasi had a similar in-your-face mentality on the court. It is what made them legends. And just like Taurasi, Caitlin Clark's confidence is something that sets her apart. Patrick also pointed out that the media attention Clark is receiving is well-deserved. He was not having any of the arguments that the spotlight was unfair to other players. For Dan, Caitlin is the one putting in the work, showing up on the court every game and proving why she deserves the headlines. If anything, he thinks the attention should be a motivator for other players, not a reason to criticize Clark.
And none of them are going to say it, but human nature is, okay, this kid's coming into the league. And Diana said it best. This kid's in for a rude awakening. And they all jumped over her, but they didn't read the whole thing that she said. But nobody's printing. Diana Taurasi was right. This kid's on the wrong team. She's got the wrong skill set to handle the physicality of that league. And she's a rookie. And if you're a WNBA player, if you're any kind of player, you're going to say, I'm going to make a statement.
But the conversation didn't just stay in the realm of sports. Dan got personal, saying that the way Clark carries herself off the court is another reason she is such an important figure in women's basketball. She is a role model, and that's something he believes we need more of in the game. As the conversation progressed, it became clear that Patrick was not just defending Clark, he was calling out what he saw as unfair treatment. He pointed out that when male athletes display confidence and aggression, they are praised for it. So why, he wondered, should it be any different for a female athlete like Clark?
She's more of just a distributor, get the ball. Her game is more like Sue Bird's game. All right? And not that Sue had the physicality to play in that league, but obviously she's the best point guard ever.
By this point, you could feel the tension rising. Patrick was not backing down, and his defense of Clark had clearly struck a chord. He reminded the audience that Caitlin's play is not just about individual accolades. Her ability to dominate games lifts her entire team. Patrick highlighted that players who can both shine individually and elevate their teammates are incredibly rare, and Clark fits that mold perfectly. Dan's response was about standing up for a new generation of players. He has seen his fair share of athletes come and go, but there is something about Caitlin that makes him believe she is the future of the sport. He was not shy in saying that the media hype surrounding her is not just a fad. In his mind, it is the beginning of something bigger. Patrick closed his argument by pointing out that Clark's aggressive style is exactly what women's basketball needs right now. She is bringing excitement, energy, and most importantly, she is drawing in fans. For Dan, that's a win for the sport as a whole. The fact that Caitlin is making headlines is not a problem. It is a sign that people are paying attention, and that's something women's basketball has been fighting for. So whose side are you on? Do you agree with Swoopes, or do you think Dan was right to criticize her? Tell us your opinions in the comments below. If you want to hear more shocking stories, go ahead and subscribe to the channel because we have got a lot more of this. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.